Welcome, Husker Nation, to yet another glorious edition of the Carriker Chronicles. And right off the bat, you probably noticed two things pretty quickly. Number one, yeah, that's right, the debate rages on in the Carriker household. Yeah, baby. Number two, my voice just doesn't sound quite as sexy as it normally does. That's because I've been under the weather for the past 2 or 3 days, but I feel a little bit better today. Hey, there was no way I was going to miss recording the Carriker Chronicles. I love doing this show too much, but we're right before it's Sunday night, recording this Sunday night right before the Pro Bowl is about to start. And so I looked at the rosters, and I saw that Ndamukong Suh's playing in the Pro Bowl, and I see that Richie Incognito is a reserve. Now, he's played the past couple Pro Bowls since the whole bullying thing, and I believe they were actually the first 2 Pro Bowls of his career, so he's bounced back nicely. He's kept his nose clean. Richie hasn't always had the most success doing that, so I'm proud of him for being able to do that. But it prompted a bunch of stories. I have some from when I played at Nebraska with Suh. I got a plethora from when I played at Nebraska with Richie. I played with Richie there for 3 years. I played with Richie in St. Louis for 3 years as well. He was the left tackle at Nebraska. I was the right end. He was the center guard at St. Louis. I was the 3-technique nose guard most of the time. So we went against each other every day, day in and day out for almost 6 straight years. Probably well over a couple thousand reps against each other. So plenty of stories to choose from. I'm going to start out with Suh, though, because we did spend a couple years together at Nebraska. We do know each other fairly well. And I chose this one because it was the first real glimpse we ever had of what Ndamukong Suh, his potential was. So we used to do this drill when I was at Nebraska my last couple years called the Oklahoma drill. There are variations of this drill. The one we used to do, you have the line of scrimmage right here. You got an offensive player, you got a defensive player, and you got a coach with a whistle. The coach blows the whistle, and as soon as that happens, offensive and defensive player meet, and you try to drive the other person back. And this drill can go for 5 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, however long before the coach blows the whistle again. Now, whoever is on the opponent's side of the line of scrimmage, when that whistle blows a second time, that's who won the drill. We used to have this tight end at Nebraska, and he was a fun-loving guy, a guy you wanted to go out with, have a good time with. He was 6'6", 260, big target, loved to catch the football. Not the most physical guy in the world. He didn't like to block. So our coach decided to teach him how to block, or if nothing else, teach him a lesson. So he calls him up, 6'6", 260, and he picks out the biggest defensive tackle, not a defensive end, not a linebacker like he'd normally go against, the biggest defensive tackle we have at the time, which is a young Ndamukong Suh. About, if I remember right, 315 pounds, maybe a little bit more at the time. So here comes Suh. And you got to remember, he wasn't Suh just yet. He was just another young pup freshman trying to earn his stripes. So he was motivated. He had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. So 260, 320, somewhere in there. Coach blows the whistle. The drill didn't last 30 seconds, 20 seconds, 5. It might have lasted 2 seconds. They hit, and Suh drove him back 10 yards. And, I mean, it was a defensive player pancaking an offensive player and pancaked him. And the reason I shared that story, other than it was kind of fun to watch, is it was really the first glimpse we all got of what Ndamukong Suh would eventually turn out to be. Now, my Richie Incognito story, it was really hard to pick just one. But the reason I picked this particular story I'm going to share, I thought you guys would enjoy the Suh story and this story because had there been a camera on me during this story, it probably would have been hilarious, like America's Funniest Home Videos type deal. So now the team is in the North Locker Room. That's where they come out before the game, the tunnel walk and all that. When I played, right for my senior year, we went to North Locker Room. Up through my junior, we were in the south end of the stadium, and that's where we'd come out. Now, in the south end, you used to have the cold tubs, the cold tanks, and you'd sit on them, and then you had glass. So you couldn't hear anything, but you could see everybody. Then you had the training room, and you could see guys doing exercises, getting worked on, getting taped, and all that good stuff. So I'm in the cold tub one day, and I've got nothing on but my tights. That's what you wear in the cold tub, and little booties to cover your toes so they don't freeze, in case you didn't know that. And so I'm sitting in there with nothing but my booties and my tights, and I'm chilling. There's nobody in there with me, and I can see a whole bunch of guys out there, everybody getting worked on. And then I see this receiver. And let me back this story up and preface this story just a little bit. Richie Incognito went through the whole bullying thing. Now, everything I heard that came out of it didn't really shock me, all right, especially the way the media portrayed it. Now, Richie he's not a bully in my opinion. In my opinion, a bully is someone who picks on someone who's weaker because he can, and when that guy finally decides he's had enough and hits him in the face, the bully backs off. A bully is weak and is soft. That is not what Richie Incognito is. I've seen Richie fight an entire defensive line at once, 4-on-1. He did not back down. He did not be quiet, and in fact, he was going after them. He did not stop. I've seen him fight all 11 starters on a defense throughout the course of a season. He doesn't care how big you are, who you are, how many of you there are, where you are. He does not care. Richie's not a bully. He is what I would call a badass who's kind of an ass. That's the best way to describe Richie Incognito. He does not care. We have mutual respect for each other. And he's one of those guys, you love him when he's on your team. You absolutely love him. You not so much when he's on the other team. So, back to my story. I'm in the cold tub. I'm freezing my tights off. And all of a sudden, I see one of Richie's best friends, a 180-pound receiver, get really, really mad. Now, this guy has got a rather large mouth himself, and he's yelling at somebody. Now, I can't see who because there's a wall right there. And he's yelling. He's getting louder and louder and louder. And all of a sudden, I see this 330-pound white blur come out of my peripheral vision, and he just takes this guy down, and he's about to ground and pound. Before there's ground and pound, he's probably going to do more than just beat him up because he's so much bigger. Everyone breaks him apart, but this receiver will not be quiet. He knows Richie, and he knows how to press his buttons, and he's going after him. He's trying to go after him too. He will not be quiet. He's going after him. Richie's going after him, trying to get him. And in the meantime, I'm trying to get out of the cold tub. But I've been in there for about 10 minutes, and my legs are frozen. I mean, I'm moving like an 85-year-old guy who needs a wheelchair. Not that that's funny, but that's how I'm moving. All right, I can't move. I'm trying to get out there to do something. Had there been a camera on me, people would have been busting up. But nobody saw me because I barely made it out of the cold tub room. I could barely move. So as the story goes, after that, because I got back in the cold tub, cooler heads prevailed, so we thought, the receiver goes in the locker room. And then, as I heard later on, Richie went in the locker room too after everyone thought everyone had cooled down. And what had happened was nobody else was in the locker room. And Richie was going after this receiver. This receiver is no longer talking trash, no longer going after. He was running, trying to get away, and Richie was chasing him. And how we know this is some guys came in right then and were able to break him up and separate him again. And the receiver was no longer talking trash. It led to Richie. It was the last straw. Richie ultimately got kicked out of Nebraska a couple days later. That's not the reason I told this story. I told this story because it's kind of funny because nobody got hurt. It's funny because I don't know, I felt like I tore something trying to get in there to do something, and I did absolutely nothing. So it's just kind of a humorous story I thought you guys might enjoy. And I'm also proud to see where Richie is at this point in his career as well. Now, this is a Husker football show, so even though the point of the show is not recruiting, come here for all of your Husker football needs, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to give you an update on recruiting because that is the latest and greatest in Husker football news. On Friday, we had Jameer Calvin, who had recently decommitted from Oregon State, commit to the Huskers. Clearly a very bright individual. He's not only an explosive playmaker, but he has the ability to stop on a dime. When I've watched him on film, it's a rare ability. Some guys can cut fast. He can stop on a dime. So I'm excited to watch him play. Also, earlier today, Kurt Rafter, I apologize if I'm saying that name wrong, is 6'7", 230 pounds, decommitted from Indiana. Good move. And shows us over Iowa. Even better move. And he is a 32nd ranked tight end in the entire country, and he's going to be coming and joining the Huskers recruiting class this year. With these two recent commits, depending on which recruiting service you look at, we're ranked anywhere from the 15th class currently in the country to the 20th recruiting class in the country. We're just going to keep climbing, and a lot's going to happen in the next 48 hours between today, Monday, and the end of Wednesday on National Signing Day. So, because of that, on Wednesday, I'm going to give you not one, but two Carriker Chronicles shows. You're welcome. I'm going to post my first one at 7 a.m. in the morning, which is earlier than I normally post it on Husker Max, Real Ball Insiders, my Facebook, and Twitter. And that's going to be a rundown, a very quick rundown, in depth of who we need, who I think we can get, which way guys are leaning, and when they're going to commit on National Signing. And then later that night, I'm going to do my first ever interview with one of the top recruits that we have in our class. He's one of the top recruits we have. He's going to sign, and as soon as he signs, I'm going to do the interview and post it, hopefully at 7 at night, depending on when he signs. One of the top recruits and commits that we currently have for this 2017 recruiting class. So 7 a.m. and hopefully 7 p.m. on Wednesday. Double dose on Wednesday. So until Wednesday, Husker Nation, go Big Red. Oh, shout out to the Nebraska basketball team. Come to me for your Nebraska basketball needs too. Comeback win over number 20th ranked Purdue. Congrats. So until Wednesday, go Big Red, and always remember to throw the bones.